Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and I'm a high school math teacher in Georgia. When I say welcome back, I kind of mean it to myself. I have not sat down to record a video in a very long time. It just kind of got away from me. Things were really crazy for a while because I actually ended up switching jobs. I'm still teaching, but I'm going to be teaching math at a different high school in a completely different county now. And so I just got caught up with the switching schools, the job interview process, getting my classroom taken down, and then obviously, you know, just all the craziness of school. So I just didn't have it in me to record. But now that everything is finalized, I got my job a little while ago. I've packed up my classroom. The school year has ended. I went on a vacation and now I just have the rest of my summer. I thought now would be the perfect time to start recording again, and I thought the best video to start recording with again would be how I got my job. So the process is really the same for everyone. It doesn't matter if you are going to be a first-year teacher or if you have been teaching for 30 years. The process for getting a job is relatively the same, and a lot of the things to do to kind of make you stand out are really the same. It's not like a secret process. So I felt like I had a really good process going into and set up, and I thought that I would like to share that with you guys. So if you are looking for a job, or you know, you maybe just store this information in the back of your head for a later date if you do decide to switch schools or something like that, these are the things that I felt were the most influential in me getting a job. I ended up with 3 final interviews with schools, and all three schools offered me a position. So I felt like what I did really kind of fit the niche of what was being looked for, and so I wanted to sit down and share that with you guys today. Okay, so the first thing I want to share is a little bit about the process of how hiring even goes about in the hiring season. So if you've been in a school system before, you probably already know this, so you can kind of just fast forward or tune this out. But when hiring happens, the first thing that schools and counties do is they send out an interest, like a return, who's going to return, who's not, all of those things. If you are already employed at a school and you think there's a possibility you won't return, I believe in transparency, and my principal even told me that he just really appreciated my professionalism and coming to him and being so transparent, and it really actually helps me out when looking for a job. I know that I've heard some people say, well, never let them know you're leaving, or secure your job and then you can break your contract, and I just don't like to play games, and I don't think that's very good employment-wise. Obviously, every situation is different. Your principal might not be as forgiving. I don't know. I've heard some horror stories, but I trusted my principal, and so right away when I knew that I was looking to leave, I was very unsure about what to put for my interest, because obviously if I couldn't have found another job, I needed to stay at the school. So I just went to him with that information, was like, I'm looking to move. It's nothing about this school. I love where I am and I want to be here if I can't find another job, but this is my situation. I'm trying to move almost an hour and a half away, close to friends and family. So what do you want me to put? And he was so sweet about it, and he just basically said, go ahead and write that down in the survey. When we send out contracts, we're still going to send you a contract, and you should sign that contract. Now, this might be different for every school, but he kind of said that it's like a gentleman's agreement that you have until like really July 4th, like when they get back into school, to break it. So he said, if you sign with us and then you find that other job, you'll have to type up a formal letter saying that you're, you know, leaving or whatever, but it's not a big deal, even though it's like this concept of breaking a contract and you've done something wrong because you signed on. But that's what he told me. So I think it's just great to have a conversation with your principal from the get-go, so they're aware of it, and then that way they can kind of help you out. So my principal was giving me all the insight about the county that I wanted to go to. He was like, they hire late, they're one of the last ones, so don't worry, this is what you need to do. Now it's a more condensed counties, or dense county, so like traffic wise, like where are you looking to live? Because if you're over here, you don't want to be over there for teaching. And I was like, oh, I don't even know yet. It just depends on where I get a job, where I get my apartment, and you know, so I mean, obviously you know your principals, but I think transparency is key. Let them know. But that's going to be very early on, so like January, February. So on the other end, job positions that are going to become available won't often be posted until March, which feels kind of antsy because you're sitting on this and you're like, well, April, May, school's done, but that's just kind of how it's going to be. They're not going to know their numbers. They're not going to know all the positions available yet until probably March, and that's when they'll start posting those. So it was a really stressful experience. Even though I was very supported, it felt like I was just never going to get the job, or they were never going to post a job, or I had this time crunch and I was not going to be able to find an apartment in time, and it was a lot. But my principal made sure I was aware of that at the beginning, like that hiring process. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you guys. It takes a while just because they don't know their numbers at the county level yet until they send out the surveys, they send out the contracts the next month, they get the contracts back, and then people break their contracts too because they're moving. So just because there's not a job in March or April doesn't mean there won't be one in May, June, or July. Because for me, when I broke my contract, it was in, I think the beginning week of May was when I was offered it. And so then that school that I was at had to turn around, make a job position opening. They started interviewing May, maybe June. So it just depends, but don't stress on it. Hiring late often happens. So what do you do to get ready? So the first thing you want to do obviously is have a resume, have a cover letter. That is super standard, no matter what, resume, cover letter. But the one thing that I did that I think that made myself stand out was I made a website. And this website I used to showcase basically a photo of myself on the homepage, reiterated some things for my resume, showed them what lesson planning looked like. I had videos of my classroom, pictures of things that I did with kids, and then I actually had my TEAC scores on there. I had those linked, and then I had pictures and evidence supporting each different TEAC standard, because that's what these principals are looking for, is somebody who's very engaged, technology driven at this point. You know, there's always gonna be technology in your classroom, and what better way to show you're comfortable with it than a website that you created just for this. And then, you know, I was putting all my TEAC stuff up there so I can support TEACs. Like when I get to your school, here's all the visual evidence of my ability to support and perform the different TEAC standards. So I'm gonna visually take you through that in a screen recording. I just kind of want to explain everything now, and then I'll go into more detail about what my resume looked like, what I put in my cover letter, how I did my website, and so forth. So first three things that I did were those. I had all three of those ready to go so that when I found the schools I wanted to go to, I could send that in an email right away to the principal. So the next step, know what schools you want to go to. Don't wait for a job opening to be posted. Reach out to those principals right away so your name and your face is in their inbox before they even start interviewing. So for example, I knew the county I wanted to go to. There was the Broad County and then the city school system as well. So I went ahead and applied to both of those right away. Before I reached out to any principal, I applied to the counties. That way when the principal was like, okay, let's take you in for an interview, I could go ahead and say, I'm already applied and ready to go. Like all my information is in the system. This is the final step. So you just want to kind of be on the front end of that, apply right away to those counties. So once I applied to the counties, and that was probably late January, even though there weren't job openings open yet, you can still, they usually just like, there's an application to put all your information in, and then once jobs open, you can go in and select the schools or the positions you want to specifically go to with your application. So it's really user friendly that way. So I applied, and then I looked at the schools I wanted to be at, and I narrowed it down to a couple of schools, and I went to their websites, got the principal's email, I found the department head for math's email, and then whatever assistant principal was over that subject, if it was listed. Sometimes assistant principals aren't listed, like their area that they're over online, but if they are and you can find it, include that. So I made a Word document of just all the schools, the principal's name, their email, department head email, assistant principal email, and then I sent an email, hello, good afternoon, whatever it was. My name is Rachel. I am a teacher at this school and I'm looking to move to this county. Your school is one that caught my eye, right? Yours is a school that I really am interested in moving to. I've attached my resume, I've attached my cover letter, but in addition, I also created a website for you to view that shows what it looks like in my classroom. This includes my lesson plans, videos, my TEKs, and that is listed right here. And then I just put the link in that email. So in February, when I sent these out, right, so I started getting everything ready January, got my research on what schools I wanted to be at. February, I sent out these emails to principals as they're kind of getting the contracts back, right? February is when they are sending contracts out, they're getting the interest from their own employees. So they're gonna be thinking like, if I need somebody, oh wait, what's that in my inbox? There's somebody who wants to be at this school. Click on the website, here's a picture of her. Oh, this is her classroom. Wow, these are her TEKS scores. Wow, this is evidence of her TEKS. I'm already in their face visually, like what I look like, face to name, what my classroom will look like at their school. And then hopefully if there's a job opening, they'll call me back and get an interview. So that's kind of what I did in order to kind of put myself out there on the front end. Never wait until the job is listed. You've got to go out there and put yourself out there first. It is intimidating. I think as teachers, we are so used to being in the background and never like boasting and like encouraging other people over ourselves, but you've just got to sell yourself. And I don't like to speak about myself a lot. I do like to talk, but bragging is hard. So I feel like the website was a way for me to brag without having to do that in person. So after emails and before interviews, there's always going to be a job fair. I say always, but you know, it changes year to year. Obviously, when we had COVID, things shut down and there was kind of like a hiring crisis and there was no positions available a long time ago. Before I even was a teacher, no job fairs. But they've been pretty consistent, at least in my state, in my area for the longest time. So another thing to do is look and to see if there's any job fairs. So a lot of times they're going to be in March or during the spring break period of that county, where they can get all the schools, principals, and APs together in one room, usually like an auditorium at one of the schools or a lunchroom. They set up booths and you literally just walk around and have your resumes ready. You present them or you drop them in a box, and then you're able to have like a 30-second conversation with somebody, and then if they like you, or you feel a need, they introduce you to the principal, or they might say just, okay, thank you so much, just if you have a resume, drop it in the box, and you're just like, oh, okay, they don't need me or something like that. But with the job fairs, always have like a 30-second kind of spiel ready of like, hi, my name's Rachel, this is what I'm certified in, this is what I coach, these are my extracurriculars, because they're always looking for extracurriculars. Like if you did clubs, list what clubs you did, like in your speech, like tell them. If you played sports, tell them, because they always are looking for that, at least in the high school level. It was funny because I actually wanted to be middle school when I first got my certification, but I was secondary, so I was really only math certified. And so when I went around to all the middle school booths and I would tell them I'm math certified, all of them would just say, and like, what else? And I would just be like, no, I'm like a math major, like you don't understand, like I can do all your like advanced maths, like this is my forte, like I have a degree in mathematics. And they'd be like, okay, well, you articulate yourself well, why don't you get certified in reading as well? And I was just like, okay, I guess middle school isn't the place for me. And then I went to the high schools, and when they heard about my athletics, they were like, oh, sports? We need coaches all the time. And then I got interviews for every single one. So that was my first experience when I was still in college. It was a little bit different this year though, because it was all virtual. So and that, I don't know what it will be like, obviously, for people down the road. But the virtual one was kind of interesting because we could sign up for one-on-ones, and sometimes they would get back to you if you signed up for it, and sometimes they wouldn't. And so some schools I had one-on-ones, some of them I didn't. Some schools offered group sessions just about like what they had with the principal. Some schools had department heads have meetings, and it was just very different and very weird. But what was kind of interesting though is that I had already sent out my resumes and stuff way earlier, like the month earlier in February, sent out my website. I had some principals email back to those emails saying, make sure you sign up for the job fair. we're going to do some one-on-one. So they kind of directed me to the job fair. And they may do that for you if it's in person as well. Like, well, we have a job fair. Like, why don't you come and like come to our booth or whatever? Because that's where they really work as a team to kind of get everything down together of like who they like and just like the vibe of people. So they really want to meet face to face. But I signed up for this group meeting with the principal, who was just going to go over the school and the openings. And it wasn't during our spring break when this county had it, so it was after school one day at 3:45. So right when school ended at 3:30, I clicked on the link for it, opened it up. I'm still working, like my mic and my camera are all muted, but I had it on just to be ready, and then when I heard talking, I was just gonna, turn myself on. So I'm working in my classroom on something, and then I hear, Rachel, are you there? And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I run over to my computer, and it's the principal, so I turn my stuff on. I'm like, hello, yes, I'm there. She's like, oh, okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure you could hear and see me. I was like, oh, yeah, we just got done with school, and I just went ahead and turned it on since I was at my computer. And she goes, oh, okay. And then she paused, and she looked at me, and she was like, do I know you from somewhere? And I was like, no, but I did email you, so maybe the name, like, I said my name again, and I was like, I sent you a website. She's like, oh, the website. And, I had my face and like pictures and stuff on my website, and so she recognized me right away. So it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, she did look at it, and it did work, and she remembered me. So I got to chat with her a little bit, and then she's like, okay, well, I'm going to just go dark for a minute until everyone gets on. I was like, okay, bye. But it worked. Like, they really did look at it and opened it, and she actually even recognized me from it and thought she knew me. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, so job fairs are where I got my interviews from both times around. So they were a little bit different. But always sign up for those, always look for those, and just make sure you have all your stuff in before that is what I would say. And that's why really January, February is where you want to look for stuff and start getting all of it ready and sent out and submitted, so that way when job fairs come, you're like, I'm already applied to the county. You don't have to worry about that. Like, here's all my information. I am ready to go. I could interview today because it just makes their life easier, because they turn around and usually start interviewing the next week. All my interviews were literally the next week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday of that next week. So they try and get them done super quick. You want to be ready to go that you could sit down at that job fair and interview that day with all of that stuff. Another thing is, if it was in person, have all of your your resume printed off like a bunch of times, because usually they just take them from you. And one thing that I did is I turned my resume into a pamphlet when I was in college, so that way it was like this little foldable, and they get thrown in a basket, and all of a sudden they see something different, and I had on the cover of the pamphlet my picture. So again, when they pull out that was just such an extra piece. They're like, oh, I remember her, and it's just like inviting. And I hadn't had any experience in the classroom yet, so I didn't have any pictures of that, but I did have actually a picture of me teaching from my field experience, and a picture of me with some at a refugee school that I did a field experience at. So you can still add stuff even though you're not maybe in the teaching world yet. Like, you have experience, document it, take pictures of you teaching in front of kids, like have your cooperating teacher, and put that in there. I put that in my pamphlet, and even though it wasn't like a picture of my classroom, it still gave a vibe of who I was and how I looked, and my engagement level. And so if you're a teacher, you could do that with a pamphlet as well. Just put some pictures of your classroom, pictures of you teaching, pictures of activities in a pamphlet with all of your information. Just makes you stand out so much more. So what I'm going to do now is take you through a little tour of the resume, cover letter, and website. And then also, final thing, I will end up showing you a questionnaire that I brought for myself when I started interviewing. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show you was my resume. And this one really isn't anything special. You could literally find this anywhere online, just all the different things or the different templates that you could find online. Anything would really work. But basically, name, email, phone at the top, which is pretty standard. My professional experience, just listing off the different subjects that I taught. My certification on the left over here, T5 certification, just all of that basic stuff. My education, things that I've done to develop the school, and key contributions. Now, this is where you really want to list off everything special that you've done at your school. So, all of this everyone has the professional experience, certification, education. What you want to talk about is how you've developed your school and things that you've done to contribute basically besides the classroom. So, for me, I was really good with Excel. So, I created resources that ended up getting used at our county level for data collection. I attended workshops and then also helped or present those workshops for our social emotional learning, um, design stuff for our canvas, all of that stuff. And then I also included the growth that I had through TEACS, just different things like that. Key contributions. This is where, for me as a coach, I only kept it to coaching stuff. Really, this could all be one thing if maybe there's no coaching at your school or you don't have any coaching experience. You might just have school development, or you might just title it key contributions. But I like to broke it, or I wanted to break it up to kind of separate between school, the things I did to develop the school, things I did in addition to. So this could be also clubs that you run, things like that. Skills is pretty basic, but I did here include the different teaching methods that I've done. I thought that was really important. I'm not sure how well that stood out in my resume, but it was definitely something I talked about also in my cover letter. But I talked about the different types of classroom setups that I've done and the different integrations of teaching types that I've done. And then other educational contributions. So I've only been at one high school my entire career. So I did keep some of the things I did in college that I thought were significant. Um, and things like that. Sorry, I was blocking some stuff out on a different page. But so here I have this. I'm going to ignore it for a second. You may be wondering what that is. That's going to come back later when I talk about a website I made. I will link this below or just put up a copy of it. I don't think it's anything really special, but first thing, obviously, make your resume. There's a bunch of different types of templates online. This is just one that I use for mine. So next that I wanted to show you is my cover letter. So this was all being done in the very beginning process of trying to figure out where I wanted to go, but I knew I wanted to be in one county. So I addressed my cover letter specifically to the county. And then in a lot of the original emails I sent, I kept it as that county name. So same thing, you want the same header, name, personal email, phone, and then I titled it blank county, the address, whatever, and then Dear Hiring Committee specifically, just because this was a blanket cover letter. And then I went from there. You can obviously like or edit it or change it so that it is addressed to specific schools. And I did that later on once I narrowed things down. But I just addressed it to the general county that I was going to be in. And then the first is always an introduction, basically same stuff from your resume, right? You talk about who you are, presenting your resume. This is my certification. These are the things I've taught, how long I've been a teacher. And then the next paragraph is where you kind of get a little bit deeper into what your thoughts are as an educator. So introduction and basic facts, what we view the classroom as. So kind of when teaching students, I believe a successful classroom is built on foundations of strong relationships, and just going into my own personal philosophy. And then the next part is where I talked about specific things from my classroom. So basic facts, general philosophy, and then the things I've done in the past 6 years to help support that philosophy is kind of how I believe the flow of your cover letter should have gone. So just throughout my 6-year career, I was in the middle of 7, so I based it as 6 years there. I successfully was able to integrate these different learning approaches, and that I took risks in my classroom doing different things like learning centers, project-based learning units, writing integration units for math classrooms, 360, flipped model. All of that were different risks every year, and I felt that me taking risks and showing kids I'm trying new things allowed my students to take risks themselves and help them grow in that comfort of we're all learning here, and I don't have it fully down. I'm always learning new ways, so you're going to always be learning and learning new ways to do stuff. And so I just kind of attach that there, like, this is, I like to learn, I like to adapt, and I think that's my biggest contribution in teaching, is modeling that risk taking for my kids as well. And then just like a final thing, as a collaborative and student-focused teacher, I welcome the chance to discuss how my expertise, skill sets, and passions would be of value in your academic program. I hate cover letters just because I feel like you have to be so braggy in who you are as a person, and I can't stand that. Um, Also, I just noticed these are two different fonts. I went back and started editing, and I think I accidentally changed a font when I did that. That's kind of funny. But anyway, um, you do have to brag about yourself, and you have to be very forward, which is very hard, I think, for teachers, because we're so used to, just being in the background and always putting kids first and other people first. And you really want to kind of brag about yourself and be forward in that. So I welcome the chance to discuss with you how I can be of value to your program. Be confident in how you're speaking. This was just very difficult for me to word, but you just have to do it. You have to say, I will be a great asset for you. I have so much knowledge and skill. Like, I would love to share with you all of that. So cover letters, also very basic, but you still need one. So first, make your resume. 2, make your cover letter. And then 3, now I'm going to show you what I think kind of set me apart from the rest of the applicants when first introducing myself. Okay, so here is the big thing that I added that kind of, I believe, set me apart as a candidate. When first introducing myself in emails at the very beginning of my job search, when all these principals are getting emails, and that is my teaching portfolio that I made online. So this is kind of the preview page, so you can kind of see it's through the website Wix. And this is my page. I did the preview, but this is kind of where I can edit and go back and work on it. So the very beginning page is just basically my resume and cover letter with a photo. And I use my master's photo. I just felt that including that photo in the very beginning and showing this is who I am along with my resume, and having this easily accessible for a principal or an assistant principal to click on, right away they see me, they see my face, they see a very clean, nice, technology driven setup. And I just feel like that really sets you apart. And so this isn't anything complicated. Really, Wix is one of the easiest programs to use. If you don't know how to do it, there's a YouTube video up there about how to do it. And that's just what I did. I never used Wix before, used some YouTube to search some things, and made my website. So I'm going to take you through the website. It did take me a couple hours to do this over a couple days, but it's not as bad as you think. So all of this, copy and pasted. Teaching philosophy, that came from my cover letter, key contributions, school development, work experience, all of this, just my resume, just a little bit cleaner, attached with a photo. So my first tab is lesson plan examples. So I thought it would be very important for them to see how I work in the classroom and how I design. So I kind of broke it down. This is to showcase how I lesson plan for a backwards design concept. There are 3 parts of how I approach this method: a monthly, weekly, and student page that I create. I broke it into definitions, or just kind of really my process, and then gave him an example. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated. Like, this is just a normal monthly planner, but I start off to begin my backwards design. I start by outlining a new unit test using a monthly planner. This allows me to set a hard test date and work backwards to design my daily lessons around the content needed for students to be successful for each test. And I just took a picture of my planner and put it in. Weekly lesson plan examples. This is the lesson plan that I use to plan each week. I utilize lesson plan template created to help stay on track of my flipped classroom design. And just again, taking a picture of one of the weeks and putting it on there. And then I use my student landing page on my website to show how now I integrate it for the students, so the students can see what our plans are. And this is my lesson planning as well. Again, none of this is crazy. Like, if you look at what I wrote, it is not anything different from a normal teacher. This is what all teachers do, right? We plan out the unit, we plan out the week, we plan out the day. And that's what I showed, just taking pictures and screenshots of that. Now, one thing I did share was I created Google Forms. So again, you kind of have to brag on yourself. So one thing that I did is I created a really nice landing page during COVID for teachers, and I showed how this is a second page that I made. I have this one for what I currently use. This is stuff I used in the past that other teachers used. And then, since I already had a YouTube page, I put in the video of how I lesson plan. And this is something that I had posted previously to show people how I do the flipped classroom. So I already had explained my classroom previously in a YouTube page. So why not just link them so they can see how I plan my classroom? But like I said, this isn't anything different, but it's just adding visuals and a clean technology uh, program so that they're seeing you're putting a little extra effort. They see you're good with technology and they get a glimpse of who you are before you even step in their office. So next was instructional strategies. So this is where I talked about the flipped classroom and the 360 classroom. And again, I don't think I really did anything. I don't even think I fully finished the flipped classroom one. I had put a video here, but I took it out and was editing it, and I think I just forgot. But yeah, nothing really fancy. I basically just kind of defined it, what it was, and then explained it and gave examples. So I did a 360 classroom as well, and gave, honestly, I had lost a lot of the videos because the 360 was pre-COVID, but I still was able to at least put up what it looked like in my classroom with the different whiteboards for my kids so they could kind of see it. I explained what types of things I would use, like the different activities, and then I even explained how I would use like writing integration. So this is my closing worksheet that I used to use when I didn't have a 360 classroom, but instead of kids getting this sheet every week, I would put these up on the board and they would go to their whiteboard to end the classroom by writing on the whiteboards. And it just made them write more. Some of these kids would just fill up the entire whiteboard with writing. And other kids would see all of that writing and it would push them to write more. And then they could read each other's writing on the other side of the room. And it just really helped expose them to more language and math. So that's also what I was able to share by showing that. And again, this is all before I even stepped in a principal's office. And the last thing, which is something that all principals really care about, is the TEKS. How can, this person really do well on their TEKS? And so I broke it down by standard. These are all copy and pasted. I did link the previous years. I accessed those scores, saved them as PDFs, and was able to link them. And again, if you don't know how to link, there's a YouTube video out there showing you how to do it. And then I defined the standards, just copy and pasted, and included visuals of how I did that. Content creation linked here, how I've created units, how I break down. Again, these are all links right here, anything underlined. You can click on that and it would take you or have you download example of instructional activities, different strategies, things I've done for differentiation, videos of that happening in my classroom, assessment strategies, assessment uses, and all of that stuff, positive learning environment, how I kind of promoted my own SEL type stuff through Mindset Mondays, just pictures of the different things in my room, projects that I did to help promote that, just a lot of different things. And these are all screenshots, really, of what I would do, or screenshots of different activities, videos, and pictures of my classroom that they could see right when they clicked on this. So, how I kind of did it, this goes back to my resume, something that I said I would show you guys in a minute. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you guys is the interview questionnaire. And so once I kind of secured interviews, this is the last thing that I did. And I brought this in on my interviews to help kind of keep me sure. It's so important to interview with multiple schools, even though if your heart is set on one, you just never know when you get there what it's going to be like and how well you vibe with the environment and the people at that school, which is, I think, one of the most important things is the atmosphere. So this was a way for me to ask the tough questions, remind myself to ask the questions, and also so I could remember after a couple interviews, because they kind of blurred together just what school did what. So before I entered, I would write the school name and go ahead and write down the people that I was going to be doing the interview with. And that way, if there were more people, I could just add them in there to remember who I was talking to. And then I just broke it into basically what I thought the flow of the interview would do. They obviously ask you a bunch of questions, but it is so important to ask your questions, which is why I brought this in every single time with me. what is it like? What is a typical day of the school? Why is this position open? Do you require extra activities? Like, what are the extras that go with this position? Because a lot of times they do ask you to do extracurriculars, and so you need to know that right away. So some schools said we do require you to do some things. It could be a club, it could be a sport, and other schools are like, we want our employees to be involved in whatever they feel best or most comfortable with. So if it's not open, we'll try and make it open. If we don't have the club, we might try and do a club for whatever you have interested in. It really varies on school what their answer is going to be, and that's going to tell you a lot about the school, those extras. So those are really good questions to ask at the beginning. Another thing is, okay, like, so what if I get this job? Then how do you support your teachers? Is there a mentorship program? Will I be paired with somebody? Do you support me continuing education? Like, what if I want to go on and get my specialist and my doctorate? Will you help, support me in that process? Will you, if I need to go down to certain number of classes, not, in a day, but preps of classes, would you support that? Let's say I'm going through my doctorate program. So how they feel about that. And then ask them questions about how they view their own culture. How they view their school, and how they view their own support of their staff. Those are important questions to kind of ask the admin. How do they feel about that culture of support? Technology available for the teachers, like what are they going to give you? All of those questions are very important because you as the teacher, if you are not supported, you cannot do your job. Then about the classroom in general, about the students, what's the ratio, what technology is there for students. So not only technology for yourself, but technology for the kids. Can I incorporate my own stuff, or do I have to follow a textbook to the T? Like, am I able to buy teachers pay teachers stuff? Am I able to bring in my own stuff that I like that helps support the standards? Or is there a set curriculum? What's the teacher to student ratio at the school in general? Because that can vary, how many in the classroom, the ratio. So just depending on what subjects you're teaching. Ask them their opinion of the students. Like, how do they view their school in general? How do they view the students at their school? Other things, this is what I label as about the school, but these are questions that were just kind of random. Um, and I like to kind of see how the principals and the admin answer harder questions. So, or how they even present their school. So one of the questions I really love to ask is, what are the challenges in your school? Like, what is the big thing that you guys are trying to work through that you guys still haven't mastered yet? One school told me it was their dress code. Another one told me it was vaping. But that transparency, if they're going to say like, well, we don't really have too many challenges here, then they're not really like being honest with you, or they're just not thinking hard through their answers. And you don't want a candidate like that on their end. So why would you want a school that can't give you those answers as well? How did admin support teachers during COVID and coming out of COVID? And I kind of relayed the issues we had at our school, or the challenges we had at our school. So I wanted to know kind of what their challenges were as well. Other things like the discipline, where they feel like they need to improve in their school, anti-bullying, things like that. Because if you've been a teacher before, all of this happens at every single school. There may be some differences, but it's going to happen anywhere. So how do they approach that? What I really liked, one school, and this isn't a school that I actually ended up taking the job at, but they said dress code was a huge issue. And so what they've just been having issues with it for years, and like, just how do we go about it in the most appropriate way? And so when in addressing that, they said that they really took a survey and found kids who were very passionate about it, and advocating, and they brought them in on a student council. And I was like, that's impressive to me. So they brought parents, kids, and admin to try and create a new approach. And then just some questions about the community, PTA, support from the community in general, and how are parents? That's a good question. I always like to see how they respond about the parents, because there's always crazy parents. They deal with them probably more than we even do as teachers. And so it's just cool to see how they answer that question, like whether they're being honest with you or they're sugarcoating. Because in an interview, again, you're trying to find a school that's going to meet you. Are they going to be honest with you, or are they going to sugarcoat everything? I'm not a big fan of the sugarcoating, because it's messy everywhere. So just be honest, right? So
I will link this as well. This is kind of like the final thing that I want to share. You need to advocate for yourself as a teacher. You need to find the fit for you as a teacher so that you can be successful. Because if you're not fitting in the right environment and you can't be successful, then your kids can't be successful. So you always just want to make sure you're asking those questions that really matter to you, so you can pick the best school for you and for your kid.
Okay, I feel like that was a lot to kind of get through, but you know, interviewing and hiring is a very big process, so I just really wanted to show everything that I knew and give out every piece of information that I had to you guys, just to kind of help through that process and give you every little tidbit that I had. Anything like the resume and the questionnaire, I will link that below just in case you want that, or you like the layout or like the question template you guys can take. With that, the kind of final things, like after an interview, obviously follow up. That's a super important thing. Thank you so much. Make sure you reiterate if there are any questions, let me know. Make sure you ask in the interview when they would have an answer by, but if you forgot, I forgot in one of my interviews, so I had to follow up an email to say, like, when will you have your answer by? I'm so sorry, I forgot to ask that, but always follow up. If you have other questions about the school, follow up with that in the email as well. If a school doesn't get back to you, I actually had this happen to me, and it's just kind of a crazy story because it happened with my #1 school. They never got back to me with my follow-up. And so, I mean, the school was great. I went into it knowing I really liked the school. But it wasn't the school I ended up taking because the follow-up and that communication wasn't there. And so when it wasn't there, I was starting to get a little bit nervous because I had reached out, asked if this was the school that I forgot to ask about when they would know by. And I asked that, they never responded to me. And I started asking more in the community. There's actually, one of my friends worked in the county that I was looking to go to. So there's a teacher's page for the county. So she asked questions about the schools on there, and I kind of heard some things, and I was like, oh, well, actually, you know, this other school is way better. All the teachers want to be at this school and this like feeder, and it wasn't, I mean, it was a good school and the interview went really, really well, but there's just like that exciting factor that I wasn't sure about just because I was so set on this other school. And then they weren't getting back to me. I ended up hearing more good things about this school, and they were so prompt and so interested in me. And so there was that connection there that I was just like, okay, well, I guess they're not gonna get back to me. And that really kind of stuck with me. I was like, where's the follow-up? Do you not value my time? I thought we were good. I thought we had fun in our interview. We laughed, we joked. I had really great answers. And then nothing. So I knew this other school was interested, and I actually already had an offer from another school. So I follow up again saying, hey, I've already had 2 offers. I'm still really interested in this school. Just please let me know, because I asked them if they could if I could wait to give those other schools an answer until I heard from them. Still nothing. And I was just like, well, if you cannot communicate with me, then this is not where I want to be. So I didn't even care about that after that. There was maybe 1 or 2 stories I was like, and then after that I was like, you know what? No, communication is such a big deal at a school, and I want to be at a school that's constantly in contact. Like, this one school was asking me questions back too, making sure I sent stuff in if they wanted more stuff. So I took that job. And in retrospect, I'm so happy I did. I think this is a better fit for me. But the first school, my #1 school, didn't get back to me until almost 2 weeks later, apologizing and then telling me congrats on the new job. They were actually gonna reach out to HR to hire me, and that's when they found out I took another job, and they were shocked that I took another job because they thought they were the #1, and I had told them that they were #1 in my head going into this process. But I don't know, check your email, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe they could have just been sweet talking me. I don't know. But they had reached out and said they wanted me, and then they heard that I was taken by another school already. And I was like, yep, I'm a hot commodity. They wanted me. You didn't get back to me, so sorry. I'm just kidding. But anyway, what I mean to say by that is don't feel bad sending the emails again and again. If they're not gonna get back to you, that's speaking to you about something. So you need to know if they're gonna communicate with you. So email them right away. If they don't get back to you, wait a couple days, email. If you get an offer, and you still haven't heard, email again, because it's a professional environment. They should be having that communication. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to make the best decision for you, and you can't do that if you don't have all the information out there. So reach out and make sure you're asking those things, and if you do get an offer, let them know. It adds the pressure, and that way at least you can get a yes or no right away and make the most informed decision. It's hard making a decision if there are some pieces that you're like, well, I don't know, I haven't heard. So advocate for yourself, right? We tell our students to do that too, but do it for yourself, and make sure if you have even extra questions about how things work in the school post-interview, ask those too in an email, you know, just because you want to make sure if you're not happy, or you're not going to be happy at the school you're going to, you're not going to be an effective teacher. So you need to make sure in the process you're not just kind of going in like them evaluating you, you're evaluating them as well. And you need to make sure that you're going to advocate for yourself and be putting yourself in an environment where you can thrive, because if you don't thrive, your kids won't thrive, and then no one thrives, right? So it really is about you. And so just go into all your interviews knowing that. Have your questionnaire ready to go, so it makes it easier to ask those questions, because sometimes, you know, they ask you a lot of questions and they're like, well, do you have any for us? And you're just like, and you get a little intimidated, you know, because it's intimidating, and teachers are so used to just, it's okay, we're good, like everything's fine, like things are on fire, but we're good, you know, like that's our natural response. So have your questions ready, advocate, ask those hard questions, and if they're not getting back to you or you have ones later, email again. Nothing wrong with that. So anyway, that's a lot. I keep talking, so I'm just gonna go ahead and end this now. If you have any questions about this or wanna know information, you can always just ask questions or comments below. If you have other tips that you feel like other teachers might benefit from, leave that below as well, right? This is meant to be a fountain of knowledge for everyone, and I do not have all of the water to fill that fountain. So please add to anything that you know that could be helpful, any resources. This was just my experience, and I really hope it helps you guys. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked it and want to see more content, just make sure you like and subscribe below. And let me know if there's anything else you guys would like to see from me. Bye.